Oh Lord, you'll never break your word. Even though I'm going through these trials and tribulations and these struggles, and I don't feel like I am where I should be. Come on, somebody. I know, God, you'll never break your word. So I put my full trust in you. Hit it.
Okay, this is for the homies that's like, show me. Look at me like I lost it because I'm not the old me. Man, I think I'm gonna lose it. People, please, it's confusing. I should just please the Lord, man. He's the only one that died for, man. Let go. As you can see, I'm in the time of transition. As you can see, that is way past wishing. I'm just getting old dreams now whispering. Just getting old dreams now whispering. Just getting. Got me afraid to tell my daughter, baby, you can do anything. What if she say, well, what happened to you? And I know that I ain't the only one that this is happening to. Dissatisfaction, okay, I need satiation from this mediocrity that I keep chasing. Y'all put me on the bigger things. It's time to change. I love what I'm doing and I'm doing it for the K. I get a rush when I serve the people winning. I'm saying, no, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. I believe everything I heard. No, you never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. I believe everything I heard. No, you never gonna break your word.
Let the redeemed say so, player, make it plain. Let's take it back to Adam and Eve in the garden where and they self. My father knew that they was naked then. The snakes can dance and Tyson and he listened. Corrupt the music, they all pawns in Satan's game. Ghosts is inside the shells, I had one foot inside of hell. Hopeless to cry for help with no focus, relied on skill. Posted about myself, wings to grow if I try this trail. In the roadblock top of me, I could see vultures plotting for meals made of flesh. In the field, it revealed what could really get me blessed. Later, I proceeded to bow both knees on the ground and begin to confess. Visions put out of the heavenly skies, I recovered, started up the steps. Change, the enemy hating my energy, but I'm a representative of remedies. Timothy 1, Timothy 2, Proverbs, wisdom, I installed in my memory, saved and out with a computer chip. Sober yet as drunk as it gets. Your word, God, I keep it close, without it no one will exist, I'm proof.
No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. I believe everything I heard. No, you never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. No, you never gonna break your word, never gonna break your word. I believe everything I heard. No, you never gonna break your word.
Okay, stop, look and listen. Let the word of God grab your attention. So you got a problem with sickness? I got the perfect prescription. Don't just talk it, I live it. So you gotta confess and believe it. He won't forsake us or leave us. He'll be right there when you need him. I mean, I call him for certain. Ain't gotta look or go searching. He exceeds my expectations according to the power that's working. Let me not fail to mention this by now. It's not a secret. You shall have what you saying. So let me ask, what you speaking? I think God is a genius. He gave his son to redeem us. No, his words never changing. You can rap it or speak it. You can sing it or preach it. Just as long as you live it. He's never broken his word. So